This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
And welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. On today's episode, I will be speaking with NBA Editorial Director for Fansided, Josh Paredes. In this episode, Josh and I will discuss trade rumors, the Spurs signing Stanley Johnson and Keldon Johnson changing his shot selection. Let's go ahead and jump right into this episode with Josh. Josh, how you doing?
Good, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Hey, man, so it looks like we're going to, in a way, be teammates again. You know, you used to work with us over at Project Spurs. Can you kind of tell the listeners about what's going on between Project Spurs and Air Alamo right now? An agreement that we've kind of agreed to?
Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty fresh to me. I think probably Project Spurs owner knows more than we do. It's something that I kind of pitched to our team a while back, and they were able to reach a partnership deal. As far as I know, Spurscast episodes will be appearing on Air Alamo articles. You can probably see that already if you check out some articles there. I'm sure there's going to be more potential for more partnerships down the line. We can have maybe some of our writers on the show. I think it's really exciting. It's just better for the fans, that to have local coverage and just coverage from around the country also, that kind of merging together a little bit. Still have our own separate blogs and everything, but I think just having a voice where we can kind of just have a little bit of a community, I think it'll be really cool. So I'm glad we were able to find a way to collaborate again a little bit.
Yeah, man. So like I said, you and I have worked together before. We used to be with us Project Spurs. So now, again, it's going to be awesome just to collaborate with you all at Air Alamo. So yes, Spurscast listeners on the Spurscast. Again, if you like to read Air Alamo, you can go read there, and you can also see the Spurscast there, and then vice versa. It'll be a Project Spurs, of course. And then also, like Josh said, I'm going to definitely have him on multiple times now, just a lot more frequently. And then also, someone to get introduced to some of their writers over at Air Alamo and start working with them as well. So, all right, Josh, let's go ahead and jump right into this episode here, the Spurscast. So the Spurs finally ended their 11-game losing streak. So I know that week after week after week, since before Thanksgiving, Joe Garcia and I from Project Spurs would get together and we discuss the Spurs, and they never could win a game. And then finally it happened. They're finally they've actually had a pretty good last 4 games since I last recorded. So they went 3-1 in the last 4 games. Let's do a quick recap of how they've played this team. So beginning, let's go back to a game against the Rockets. They won. They ended the losing streak by beating Houston by 9 points in San Antonio. Houston was the favorite. This was a close game up until the mid third quarter. Then the Spurs kind of took over and they kind of built a good margin against Houston. There was no Devin Vassell, no Jakob Poeltl or Jeremy Sohan in this game. They were on the injured list. Then for the Spurs, a second win in a row, they go on the road to Miami and they beat the Heat by 4 points. This was a game where Miami was favored, by a lot. I think it was like 12.5. It was a close game throughout the game. Again, still no Poeltl, no Sohan. Devin Vassell comes up clutch here against the Heat. He had some big buckets there in crunch time. And so the Spurs do defeat the Heat on the road. Then the Spurs come back to San Antonio and they defeat the Cavs this week by 1 point in San Antonio. Cleveland, of course, was favored there as well. The Spurs led by double digits from midway the second quarter to about the end of the third quarter. So it's pretty comfortable lead for San Antonio. But of course, Cleveland's a very good team, and they showed there in the fourth quarter they started to make a comeback. It got into crunch time. The Spurs were able to make plays and hold on, and then the only player who was out from the rotation there was Jakob Poeltl. And then the 3-game win streak ended up getting snapped by the Portland Trail Blazers. They come into San Antonio on Wednesday. They defeat the Spurs by 16 points. Portland was favored. Portland, had a pretty comfortable lead from most of the game, except for late in the third quarter. The Spurs got it down to 4, but then they kind of ran out of gas, and Portland had all that momentum. Damian Lillard was just going off against San Antonio, and we do want to note that the Spurs had a tough time in the paint against Portland because they were missing both Zach Collins is on the injured list and Jakob Poeltl, both of their starting and backup centers. So overall the Spurs had a great 4 games. Vegas thought they would go 0-4. They ended up going 3-1. So this is a surprising turnaround for this team. What were your thoughts, Josh, on the Spurs? Finally ending that losing streak, and then not only that, coming up with a 3-game win streak.
Well, first of all, our personal curse has been lifted finally. I feel like every time I'm on the show, they're on an extended losing streak. So it was good to see. I had a feeling they would lose against Portland, so I was like, we're going to come in off of a loss, but those 3 in a row were very encouraging in different ways, especially without Poeltl, their defensive anchor, and very underrated in general, on the offensive glass and everything. So it was good to see. My favorite part of the week was Vassell with those clutch shots that he had against Miami. That's something I've been calling for, on Twitter and everything. Just I want to see that moment, and I feel like there's been a lot of moments where he has a shot to at least tie the game or take the lead, late in in the game, is just from the beginning of his career, and he just hasn't been able to do that quite yet. I feel like there's a lot because I watch him closely. I really want him to be like the
Yeah.
close that's what I've been waiting for, and to see him hit two of those in both pretty difficult shots, just like
Yes.
good move separation, getting that mid range, showing what he like. I feel like this is something that stars are able to do whenever they're called upon, and seeing the first sign of that, I think, is the biggest development of the week. I mean, the wins and losses don't really matter. I think we can all agree this season. I mean, ideally, they'd probably lose more for their long term. But yeah, a lot of encouraging things considering how beat up this team has been. I like that Josh Richardson had a great game too in there. So more to maybe fuel the trade rumors that that could be coming very soon. So all in all, you want to see, as a Spurs fan, you want to see them compete, play well, but if they don't win, that's fine this season. And I think that's what we got, some wins, but they're still last in the West, so I think
Yeah.
it's looking fine.
Yeah, and so like there's two points there. Like you made one of them right there was the fact that they're finally getting bodies back. They're finally getting players back, key players to their team. The only player pretty much that's out at this point is still Jakob Poeltl. We don't know the injury report for Saturday when they played Mexico City against the Heat. But that's one part of it. And another part, I do want to give some credit to Matthew Tynan, who also covers the Spurs. He had tweeted how the Spurs, just having 3 days off before that Houston game was really big for them, not only to just rest and recover, but also to just kind of just install their practices and get their defensive foundations back. And that's kind of what they've talked about since they come back. And you see it there in the numbers. I mean, they had 3 really good defensive games against Houston, Miami, and Cleveland. The one where they slipped, of course, was against Portland. But like you said, they're kind of expected to lose that one, especially without their 2 starting centers, at this point, their 2 starting centers. And so I think that's a big part of it, was the fact that they finally got some rest. They finally got to work on their foundational principles, and it really showed early on and how they've been playing. And even against Portland, they were up by like 16 on San Antonio, but the Spurs had a chance there. They did make a little bit of a comeback. Right. All right, so through 28 games, where are the Spurs? They are still 29th on offense. So even though they're 3-1 lately, the numbers haven't really moved too much. They're still last on defense in the league, 30th in net rating. They're now 19 and 19 overall through 28 games. They're, like you said, Josh, 15th out west. They used to be 15th out west before. As far as their lottery odds, it does get worse it's not a good thing whenever you win games, because then it decreases your chances of having a top pick. So basically, when they were on this losing streak, they had the 2nd worst record in the league, and now that they've won some games here, they have the 4th worst record in the league. Did you have any comments there about their rankings? Or
I mean, defense isn't great. I liked the stretch that they had, even especially considering they didn't have Poeltl. I felt like the letdown in the paint was expected, like we said about the centers, but I do like, it's not good seeing them so low. I think Poeltl coming back will change that a lot. It's very different when you have him in the paint as opposed to not. We saw that against Portland. So that's what sticks out to me the most, but nothing too surprising here. We know what this team's roster has and what it needs. So not too surprising.
Okay, so and mentioning Poeltl there, that's actually who we're about to talk about next. Let's go ahead and transition to our next topic, and that is trade rumors surrounding Jakob Poeltl. And also the December 15th is officially here. You and I are recording this episode on December 15th, the Thursday evening. And so first, let's go into a report about Poeltl. So Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports wrote recently about Poeltl. He says, basically, here's some takeaways from his article. He said, if Poeltl isn't traded, re-signing with San Antonio remains an option for Poeltl. He will strongly consider. So again, that's kind of something we've talked about before in the past, how the Spurs have an edge on other teams if Poeltl doesn't get traded this season, because they have until I think June 30th to offer him a contract extension. And if not, they're going to have a lot of cap space, and they have like his bird rights, things like that, if they want to try to re-sign him this summer. League executives, according to this article, project that Poeltl's next deal could be in the $15 to $25 million annual range. So definitely way more than he used to get in the MLE range. Per Profit X, right now, based on how he's playing this season right now, Poeltl is playing like a player who's outperforming his contract, playing like a player earning $27.6 million this season. You just look at the base numbers for Poeltl, what he's putting up: 13 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and 2 turnovers in 27 minutes when you round his stats this season. And then some teams that have had interest in Poeltl, Fisher writes that the Toronto Raptors have had interest in him ever since he got traded to San Antonio. And that's kind of been a rumor that's kind of been going around for multiple years now. The Boston Celtics have also been interested in Poeltl, but right now they're not active in any kind of trade talks. And then the Chicago Bulls last season did have interest as well in Poeltl, and I'm sure there's other teams out there. What are your thoughts there, Josh, about Poeltl's name being one of the first names mentioned here now that December 15th has arrived?
I mean, it's expected. There's been rumors for a long time, especially Toronto, like you said. I feel like I wrote about that a year ago, where they were interested in him. Like, I feel like ever since they lost him, they wanted him back since he showed a little life here in San Antonio. Celtics sounds interesting to me. I feel like that'd be cool to have him and Derek, with the serious chance to win a title as soon as this. I mean, whenever he's over there, very soon probably. If that happens, I don't know if that will though. It's right now in my head. It's it's like 50-50, I think. I don't know. I feel like he'd be fine staying. I like what he does in San Antonio. There's very much a need for his type of player with this young core. Um, but at the same time, if they did want to move on, I feel like they would get their money's worth, like they did with DeJounte, like they've done so often. Like they did with DeRozan. I feel like that's been paying off. Even though it seemed kind of iffy at the time, they kind of had to. This might be a case where it's kind of the same thing. I believe Jake Fisher interviewed him in that piece, or
Yeah.
maybe a related one, where he was talking about like he's never been in a position where he's going to be unrestricted free agent. Like he's excited about that. So I don't know if you're the Spurs front office, if you want to just cash in now while his value as at its highest. So I think either way they go, it would be okay. They would get their money's worth, and who knows what Bassie could turn into after, or if Collins can keep growing. But I'm curious what you think. Like, do you think Poeltl? Are you kind of the same way? Do you feel like either way they go is okay with you?
So for me, I think it's going to come down to the picks. How many picks are they getting for him? If the teams are offering 2 or more first round picks, I think the Spurs are going to go ahead and jump at that offer and go ahead and propose go with the trade. Because there's no guarantee too. Like you said, he's actually excited to go into free agency and to see what it's like to be courted by teams. And so again, there's no guarantee. Even though yes, he was considering San Antonio, there's no guarantee that he would resign. So he could end up losing him for nothing. But yeah, I'm kind of like with you there. I'm like at a 50-50. Like I think it just comes down to the number of picks that the Spurs get, and what are the protections on those picks. And so I think that if it's a really good deal for them, I just don't think they're going to turn it down. Even though yes, you're right, he's like a real foundational piece for this team right now. Helping these young players, and we see how they're struggling without him. But so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of like with you, kind of in that 50-50 range.
Yeah, it has to be worth it. And if not, then him sticking around isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then they have, like we said, they have that chance to re-sign him. And so, let's talk about December 15th, why that date is so important. So these are some notes from Bobby Marks of ESPN and also from my cap sheet as well. So the reason why December 15th is so important is because as of today, 74 free agents who signed their deals this past summer are eligible to be traded now. So even though, trades aren't going to start happening right on today, this opens up kind of the more players are available to be traded. And so what's the Spurs' situation now? We know that the only free agent they really signed was Gorgie Jang this offseason. And yes, he is eligible to be traded, but they're not going to trade him right now anyway. But but with this
every season or something.
Exactly. So like what this means for the Spurs is like teams that are ready to move on from players that they signed this past summer. This is where Jakob Poeltl's name might come up, or Josh Richardson or Doug McDermott. Now teams have more flexibility to make trades, and for the Spurs, they can just be involved in a lot of different trades because of their cap space that they have. They have $28.4 million in cap space now that they signed Stanley Johnson, who is probably on a partially guaranteed contract. So the Spurs have a lot of flexibility to participate in trades, and that's why that date is so important. Did you have any other thoughts here on December 15th finally approaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think that cap space is what's crucial here. I feel like they'll make a trade if they can use that for assets. So that's really the asset gaining is where they're at right now, and that's where they should be. So they're not going to make splashy trades. Spurs rarely do, and it's not going to happen here. They're gonna do something for the betterment of like their future with this core of Keldon, Devin, Sohan. So I wouldn't expect too many fireworks. I of the players that you mentioned, Richardson and McDermott probably are the most expendable, as well as Richardson's been playing. I feel like they're already loaded in that position.
Yeah.
With McDermott, it's like they have Sohan, more of a all around two-way play. I mean, maybe not two-way yet. His shot's a little needs a lot of work, but he's showing signs of being able to create and finish and get rebounds, and of course his defense is game changing compared to McDermott, of course. So it'll be interesting to see if they make some minor moves. They do have the cap space too, so they're going to be a team to watch. I just it's probably not going to be anything too crazy.
Yeah, I think for them, like I think we're going to continue these next 2 months until February gets here. That we're going to continue to see those three players' names and different rumors. But I think the Spurs are going to kind of hold on to those players until that final deadline. Are they going to make a decision on Richardson, McDermott, or Poeltl? And what is the best offer? So again, that's kind of what I'm expecting there. All right, so now let's transition to another topic here, and this is Keldon Johnson. I mean, Joe, last episode, Joe Garcia and I talked about how he was really struggling, lately, especially with his 3-point shot. We kind of went into a deep dive into all the numbers, and now he's kind of changed his shot profile. And he mentioned how he wanted to do this after a game where he said, he's going to start attacking more inside out is how he's going to start playing it. So I've been seeing every night, I mean, almost every game in December since it started, the calendar flipped here, that he's been getting like 10 or more paint points every night. Now we know that he's not taking the 3-ball as much anymore. So that's the other part of it. And so I was like, I've been really interested in this episode specifically because I wanted to like dig up the numbers and see what it looks like. And so now we actually have the numbers here of what a 6-game sample size looks of Keldon, mainly being an attacking player of primarily instead of being an outside shooter anymore. And so let's see what the data says here. So overall, in 6 December games, he's actually scoring more points. He's averaging 24 points on 21 shots, so he is taking more shots. And he's also still collecting 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 turnovers. Now, compared to before that, from October to November, he was averaging 20 points on 18 shots, so 3 less shots, getting 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 turnovers and 1 steal. So again, just overall production, he looks like he's being more productive right now in his efficiency with this new shot profile. Now let's actually dig into the shots. So when we look at his shooting, so before he changed his shot selection, he was 48% of his shots were coming from the 3-point line, and 44% were in the paint. Now with his new approach of attacking inside out first, 71% of his shots are coming from the paint, and just 25% of his shots are coming from the 3-point line. We do note that his paint efficiency, his paint scoring has just gotten way more efficient. He's getting over a point per shot when he's attacking the paint right now in these 6 December games. His 3-point shot has, he has really regressed there. He's really had difficulty, sustaining that 3-point shot. So he's not, he's not being an accurate shooter from there. And we do see in the 3-point data that, before teams weren't leaving him open, only 31% of his attempts were open, and now teams are starting to back off of him. And then we also see it in some of his drives numbers where he actually went from 10.4 drives a game from October to November to now 15 drives a game. And we see there that he's just much more attacking the basket, passing just a little bit less to his teammates. So we do see that early on. There is, I guess you would say like an efficient part of this now for Keldon, the fact that he's kind of changed his shot profile and it's working in these first 6 games for him in December. What are your thoughts on how he's kind of changed his shot format?
Yeah, I mean, it's working for him and it's working for the Spurs overall so far in their last few games. I think this really kind of just speaks to his adaptability. I think, when he first started in his career, he wasn't really much of a 3-point shooter. He would just barrel into the basket, get some charges, sometimes have good finishes. But, then all of a sudden he's just a sniper for like a whole season and just burying shots like moonballs. And then now it seems to be where maybe they were crowding him a little bit more and he needs to get back to driving. We just need it, at a certain point, if he puts it all together and he's able to do all of it at once, then we're talking about borderline all-star material. Right now, it's kind of just like he's working on one thing and then the next. And then, right now, the next thing for him will probably be working on the ball handling on drives to the basket where he tends to just get it poked away or just has a kind of a clumsy shot because he's not sure what he's going to do when he gets in there. That'll probably be the next thing, but it's good to see that he can find different ways to score. I feel like that's something that's been a little limitation of him. That's something that Devin Vassell has over him. I think Devin Vassell can create his shot and find ways he has moves in his bag that Keldon doesn't. So if he's able to kind of put it all together where he's a 3-point threat and a driving threat at the same time, maybe a floater threat every so often, then we're talking about maybe a 25, 26 point per game guy that you can rely on. But it's good to see that it's working for him right now. And, maybe as the season goes on, we'll see a few games here where he just has it put all together, and we can really see what he can do.
Yeah, so I'm interested though to watch the first of all I want to give him some credit. He was struggling, especially with his 3-point shot. That's where a lot of his points were coming from, and so he definitely took it upon himself to change his shot selection, and he's doing it this way now where he's scoring inside out. So yes, you're right, he's being efficient right now. I am interested though to see that after a few more games of this, when defenses start changing, they're going to say, hey, all he wants to do is drive to the paint. Let's start getting multiple bodies ready for his drives, and let's start making it tough for him. So then, is he ready to start taking the threes again? Because like as we see here, he's really struggling from his 3-point shot aside from maybe like the corners. And so I don't know if that shot is quite back yet. So that's the one thing I am interested to see in a few more games here. And even though he's definitely being more efficient, he's being way more productive, the team 3-point shooting is going to unfortunately be have some difficulty because he was their main 3-point taker.
Yeah.
He took the most shots for this team every night. And so I did want to look at the numbers. So during the same time frame from October through November, the first 2 months of the season, and now these December games, 6 of them where Keldon's been attacking more, I wanted to see what does the team shot profile look like from 3-point land. And so we do see a major difference here. In makes, they were 16th to Spurs, making almost 12 threes a night. From October to November, and now they're down to about 10 makes nights, about 2 less made threes. So they're 23rd. Then in attempts, just launching threes, 34.3, 12th before, and after they're down to 30.5, about 31, 19th. And then 3-point accuracy, 34.7%, 18th, and now it's down to 31.1%. Just that's not a good shooting number for any team. 25th right now in December, and again, it is a small sample size in December. But really, what this tells me is that it's a lot of the 3-point responsibility now falls on the shoulders of Devin Vassell, Josh Richardson, and Doug McDermott. Those are the 3 players. Yeah. Even a player like Trey Jones hasn't really been shooting threes anymore. He's kind of backed off that shot as well, even though he was a little confident at the beginning of the year. Sohan's not quite ready for that shot. Zach Collins will take it if it's there. There's not high volume shooters on this team aside from those 4 players: Keldon, Devin, Richardson, and Doug. So now I feel like those players, there's a lot more pressure on them to perform from 3. And the Spurs, we do note that they have a tough time whenever they lose a 3-point line. I think they're like 1 in 15 or something like that. So that there is some give and take there. What are your thoughts there about this? The team?
I think I know mostly from following you on Twitter just how bad it is whenever they lose the 3-point game. I feel like their record is like abysmal, almost as bad as the falling behind by 10. I think they're like you tweeted 16 before.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 3-point line is increasingly more important every season, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon. So it's probably for the best if Keldon is able to get that back. Ideally, he'd have both. But I'm sure it's going to be a process. Part of me wonders how much Poeltl might affect getting people open, setting screens, stuff like that for some of these shooters. And his passing game is underrated also, so that could be a factor when he comes back, spacing the floor with him down in the middle. So yeah, it's going to happen especially with all these injuries and people coming in and out of the lineup, and Josh Richardson suddenly having a hand injury, but then he's fine. Like there's a lot of weird things happening with these injury reports. But yeah, who knows with Keldon? It seems like it's seesawing back and forth. They're going to crowd him, and then he's going to drive, and then now they're going to stop the drive, and maybe he'll just go back to shooting threes and making them again. So as long as he can keep that confidence, I feel like confidence isn't a thing that we need to worry about with Keldon. Then I think we're going to see it trend back a little bit more.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to see, how does he adapt, and how does the team adapt once they start to figure out that, hey, this guy just wants to drive, and so what are we going to do to stop that? And then it's his 3-point shot ready to go. All right, so the last topic, Josh, let's discuss here is the Spurs did sign a player this past week. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the Spurs did sign Stanley Johnson. So in order to sign Johnson, they had to waive a player, and that player who got waived was Alize Johnson. So they waived one Johnson, they still have another Johnson, they still have Keldon on the team as well. So a lot of Johnsons on the Spurs this year. Anyway, so who's Stanley Johnson? He's a veteran with 7 years of experience. He's played with 4 different teams. The Spurs are now his 5th team in the NBA that he's played with. His career averages about 6 points a game, 3 rebounds, 1.5 assists. He's likely going to be an end of the bench wing player, kind of like what Stanley Johnson was, kind of like what Alize Johnson and what Jordan Hall were, because
Yeah.
there's just so many different wings in front of him in the rotation. You got Keldon and Vassell in the starting lineup. You have Josh Richardson and Doug McDermott off the bench. Then you have Romeo Langford, who popularly likes defensively. He's been playing him whenever he's healthy. And then also even rookie Malachi Branham's getting a lot of minutes lately. I was surprised to see him in that most recent game when they had a lot more players available, but he even got minutes. And so one thing, like you mentioned, Josh, is that the Spurs are dealing with a lot of injuries this year. So I think that's going to be an opportunity whenever a player's out for Stanley Johnson, is that the Spurs are being very cautious with injuries this year. And if you just have anything wrong with you, they're gonna sit you for that night. So what are your thoughts on the Spurs bringing in Stanley Johnson now?
Yeah, I mean, nothing really sticks out to me about him. I do remember he had a couple of like nice games with the Lakers last season. I think there was
Mhm.
one where he like closed the game out. He had a bunch of clutch plays and everything. But every NBA player has a stretch like that. I'm not really expecting a lot from him, but maybe if there are like we keep seeing a lot of very long injury reports, he'll get a chance to do a thing here or there. I'm not did he actually play a little bit in the last
Yes.
game?
He
Okay,
got
I
four,
must
he
have
got
just
4 minutes. It was right at the end though, when it was pretty much
okay,
over.
yeah, I think I had moved on to something else by then, but yeah, I wouldn't expect him to be any kind of long-term guy on the roster. Might just show a flash here or there. He's he was joking that he's like one of the older guys on the team already, even though he's only 26. So might just be a bit of a veteran presence, give some intel on the Lakers. I don't know. Like I don't expect a whole lot, but I think this is just the Spurs kind of um, making sure that they have some safety with all these injury concerns.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, is the fact that they've added now 3 players, via free agency with that 15th roster spot. And it's really always been players like on non-guaranteed or partially guaranteed deals, just very small amounts. That way, they are able to waive a player, and then they could. So I think that's the thing we're going to see going forward, is like if they like maybe like a young player from like the G League that's playing really well, they can waive someone and then add that player, or it gives them flexibility for the trades whenever if they do happen. If they got to do like a 2-for-1 kind of trade, they got to bring in an extra player. Then that works out for them, because they can just waive a player who's on a non-guaranteed deal and have that flexibility. All right, so thanks to Josh for joining me on this episode of the Spurscast, and I also want to say thank you to Joe Garcia for mixing and producing this episode. Make sure that again you check out airalamo.com, where if you want to listen to the Spurscast, it'll be there, and also read Josh and all of his colleagues' works over at Air Alamo. And then also continue to visit projectspurs.com. So from all of us at Project Spurs, and now Air Alamo as well, stay safe and have a great day.